You've heard the story 1,000 times. Texas, no state income tax, oil money, endless land, tech giants rolling in, families fleeing California and New York to start fresh in a place where supposedly the math always works and real estate only goes one way. For a long time, buying a house in Texas didn't feel like a risk. It felt like a cheat code. You weren't investing. You were grabbing a ticket in a game that everyone told you was rigged in your favor. But there's a question no one wanted to ask. What happens when the miracle stops looking invincible? You're starting to see the answer. For sale signs that used to flash for a weekend now sit like permanent yard decorations. Price cuts that were once whispered in back rooms are now shoved in your face in red font on every listing. Builders who used to act like gatekeepers now sound like car salesmen at the end of the quarter. This isn't a gentle cool down. This isn't a normal correction. In the suburbs we're about to visit, what's happening looks a lot closer to a controlled burn that slipped the line and is now eating through everything in its path. Today on across.us4, we're taking a hard drive through 10 Texas suburbs, where the housing dream is quietly twisting into a financial problem most people are not prepared for. These are the places that built too much, too fast, priced too high, too long, attracted the wrong kind of money, and now sit with more inventory than buyers, more risk than reward, and more stories than solutions. And the suburb at number 1, 12 months ago, people would have laughed at you for even suggesting it could get hit. If you own in Texas, plan to buy in Texas, or just want to understand how a can't-lose market can start to leak, this is your briefing. Do one thing before we roll. Hit subscribe and drop a comment with the Texas suburb you're most worried about right now. It helps this reach the people who need it, and it tells us where to dig next. Ready? Keys in, tank full. We start in the North Dallas sprawl. Number 10, Frisco. When build everything backfires, for years, Frisco wasn't just another suburb, it was a brand. NFL training facilities, corporate campuses, perfect turf fields, and perfectly staged model homes. If Dallas had a showroom floor for the good life, this was it. Frisco was where families went for better schools, corporations went for tax deals, and land builders went to pour concrete until the horizon ran out. It worked until it didn't. Drive around Frisco today and you see something that doesn't show up in glossy relocation brochures: finished streets with finished houses. And very few lights on at night. Entire sections of brand new communities, sod-laid driveways, poured signs up. And yet you feel it. This place isn't alive yet. Recent listing snapshots tell the same story. New construction inventory up massively in a short window. Roughly 1 in 3 active listings has already taken a price cut. And we're not talking about trimming $5,000 at the edges. You're seeing $50,000, $70,000, $100,000 chopped off initial asking prices just to stir up traffic. But here's the catch. Even after those cuts, the payment still doesn't work for a normal household with local wages and current mortgage rates. That's the core problem in Frisco. Prices were built for a world of 3% rates and endless inbound money. Reality is now 7% rates and buyers with calculators. Affordability indexes for the area have scraped levels not seen in roughly 20 years. The average family income that used to just barely qualify? Now it doesn't, and the resale market is getting crushed from two sides. Old owners trying to sell 8 to 15-year-old houses. Builders offering brand new homes with interest rate buydowns, closing cost credits, free upgrades. If you're a buyer, it's simple. Why buy the older home with dated finishes when the builder will cut you a deal on something brand new? Result? Days on market stretching far beyond what anyone in Frisco thought was possible. Sellers who watched their neighbors sell in 3 days now sitting for 60, 75. A growing realization that the paper equity they bragged about is evaporating the moment it touches the open market. Frisco is what happens when the machine keeps building as if demand is infinite. It never is. Number 9, McKinney, the comfort prison of 3% loans. Next door to Frisco sits McKinney. Different problem, same pressure. If Frisco is drowning in new construction, McKinney is wrapped in something more subtle. The golden handcuffs of ultra-low interest rates. Here's how it played out. 2020-2022, rates are around 3%. Buyers stretch to get into McKinney. Because the monthly payment works, they lock in a house at or near peak pricing. On paper, it looks great. You got in. You beat the bidding wars. You locked a cheap rate. But today, many of those same households are house rich, cash poor, and psychologically trapped. Because if they try to move, they'll be selling into a softer market, buying at still high prices and taking a new mortgage at double the old rate, so they sit. That sit shows up in the data. Homes taking more than twice as long to sell as they did recently. A wide, painful gap between list prices, what sellers hope, and sale prices, what buyers will actually pay. Transaction volume down sharply as people freeze rather than take a loss or a higher payment. There's another layer. Sellers in McKinney are anchored to the prices they watched their neighbors get in the hype years. They remember $50,000 over asking all cash offers, bidding wars in 48 hours. That era is gone. The buyers left in the market are rate-sensitive, payment-focused, and willing to walk away. So you're seeing 8 to 10% gaps between what homes are listed for and what they actually close at nice homes, taking 60-plus days to move unless they're heavily discounted. Owners who never thought of themselves as speculators now quietly realizing they kind of were. McKinney is where you see this clearly. A low rate doesn't save you from overpaying, it just delays the pain. Number 8, Prosper. Luxury finds its ceiling. Now we head north into a place whose name sounds like a headline, Prosper. During the boom, Prosper became the landing zone for executives, business owners, high-income tech, or remote workers. This is where the move-up buyer went when they were done with starter homes. Big lots, big square footage, big statements. But luxury markets aren't bulletproof. They're just slower to admit weakness. In Prosper, the cracks are no longer cracks. They're lines running through the entire high-end segment. Look what's happening. Inventory for homes above wire 1.5 million has exploded. Spec homes and large new builds sitting empty, finished, and waiting price cuts that look less like adjustments and more like evacuations. You're seeing reductions of $200,000, $300,000, even $500,000. Why? Because the people who fund this level of housing, stock-rich, bonus-paid, equity-heavy professionals, have taken hits. Volatile markets, tech cool-downs, uncertain bonus structures. The waterfall is simple. When assets were flying up, dropping $1 or $2 million on a house felt normal. As assets flattened or slid, buyers started hesitating. Builders kept building as if nothing changed. Now those builders are carrying high-interest construction loans, high holding costs, finished but empty properties. They cannot sit on them forever, so they cut. That resets comps for everyone. If your neighbor's nearly identical home just sold for $750,000 after being listed at $1 million, what does that do to your estimated value? Prosper is where wealth learns a brutal lesson. The market doesn't care how much you thought your house was worth. It cares how much someone will wire for it today. Number 7, Anna, the exurb, where the math broke. We push further north on 75 and land in Anna. This is exurb territory, the place people end up when every closer option is too expensive. The pitch was simple. Can't afford McKinney or Frisco? Just drive a little further. Builders grabbed cheap land, platted subdivisions, and turned farmland into mass-produced neighborhoods. Buyers with smaller budgets or smaller down payments said yes. At first it worked. Remote work was booming, gas was cheaper, the commute felt doable, a couple days a week. But here's the thing about exurbs. They only make sense with cheap money, stable remote work, and low carrying costs. Start messing with those variables and the entire model shakes. What you see in Anna now, a massive share of homes built in a tight window, 2019-2023. Similar floor plans competing directly with one another. Inventory up heavily, more for sale signs than real demand. Add this on top, foreclosure filings in the area ticking up, families stretched by. Higher gas office return mandates. Cost of living they didn't factor in when they chased cheaper up the highway. Builders, again, are trying to move product. $30,000, $40,000 cuts. Closing cost assistance rate buydowns. Existing owners can't match those incentives. If you bought with minimum down at the peak and now need to sell, you may be looking at little to no equity, or even negative equity once commissions and closing costs hit. Anna is where the drive until you qualify strategy collides with real life and exposes its fine print. Number 6, Leander, the tax bomb. No one read the label on. We leave DFW and drop into the Austin orbit, landing first in Leander. Leander was the official escape hatch for people priced out of Austin and Cedar Park, but who still wanted close enough to tech and city amenities. The sales pitch looked like this: new homes, good schools, fast-growing area, no state income tax. It sounded great until the property tax bills arrived. Texas doesn't tax your income, but it absolutely taxes your land and structure. And in a place like Leander, here's how the trap sprung. Buyers stretched to buy 500, 700 KOI homes at low rates. Appraised values jumped aggressively in the boom. Property tax rates in Williamson County are among the highest in the state. Result: families expecting one number got hit with $15,000, $20,000 per year in property taxes. That's an extra $2,200, $600 per month on top of the mortgage. On a fixed salary, that's a financial gut punch. Add in insurance, HOA fees, rising utility costs, and suddenly a house that felt just manageable becomes a slow financial leak. Data trends for Leander: inventory up strongly. A meaningful share of recent buyers now underwater on their mortgages. A chunk of homes owned by investors who bought remotely and now see higher taxes, softer rents, and worse cash flow. So they list. That stacks more supply on a market already struggling with affordability. Leander is the case study for this lesson. Don't just ask, can I afford the mortgage? Ask, can I afford the ongoing cost of ownership when the taxman recalculates? Thousands of people didn't. They're paying for that oversight now. Number 5, Georgetown, retirement meets reality. Stay just up the road and you hit Georgetown, a place that was marketed as the soft landing for retirees. Sun City golf carts, community centers, low stress. For retirees from California, Illinois, or the Northeast, the logic was, sell high there, buy comfortable here. Pocket the difference and live easy. But retirement has a weak point: fixed income. If your income doesn't move much, but your costs do, you're exposed. In Georgetown, here's what's risen: property taxes, insurance, everyday living costs, healthcare-related expenses. At the same time, market volatility has shaken retirement portfolios. Home prices in the states they left have softened, making the cash out and move math less impressive. The result on the ground: retiree-focused communities with rising inventory homes. Sitting 90, 100 days on market seniors who would like to downsize or move to different care setups but can't hit their target sale price. Push further and it's darker. Some longtime homeowners bought a decade ago, watched paper values jump, saw their tax assessment spike along with it, but their income didn't double just because the county says their house is worth more. So each year, the tax bill feels a little heavier. Georgetown exposes a truth people don't like to say out loud. A rising home value is not always a blessing, especially when you're not planning to move and the main thing rising is your tax burden. Number 4, Kyle. When smart tech money blows up your street, drop south of Austin along I-35, and you'll find Kyle ground zero for one of the strangest experiments in modern housing: the iBuyer invasion. Here's what happened. Tech-driven companies with algorithms, Zillow offers, Opendoor, etc., decided they could streamline home flipping at scale. They bought houses in bulk, often sight unseen, at aggressive prices. Kyle became one of their playgrounds. They weren't carefully curating neighborhoods. They were running models, pumping in capital, treating houses like stocks. While the market was ripping, it looked borderline genius. Then rates went up. Demand cooled. The appreciation they were counting on evaporated. They were left holding blocks of similar homes, bought at peak or near peak prices, with carrying costs and no quick exit. So what did they do? They started unloading. Fast. You saw houses bought for $450,000 being dumped closer to $320,000, losses of over $100,000 per property. Fire sale pricing just to get them off the books. They can write it down as a business loss. But your house doesn't sit inside their balance sheet. If you're the guy next door, your comp just got nuked. Kyle now has a noticeable share of vacant corporation-owned houses, zombie listings where no one really lives there, but the property still affects everyone's value. Local sellers trying to sell real homes for real reasons in a market distorted by tech washouts. This wasn't a natural cycle correction. It was an experiment conducted on a real town with real families. The companies move on, the locals stay. Number 3, Pearland, when insurance becomes the deal breaker. We head to the Houston Metro and land in Pearland, where the problem isn't hype, it's risk pricing. You don't have to be beachfront to feel the gulf. Houston's southern suburbs, including Pearland, have been hammered over the years by heavy rain events, flooding storm systems that linger longer than anyone wants insurers notice. They are not sentimental. Here's what's happening in Pearland and similar areas. Big carriers tighten their underwriting or pull back. Remaining carriers hike premiums hard. New flood maps pull more properties into official flood zones. End result for the average homeowner, standard homeowners insurance that once cost $2 to $3K per year now lands at $6 to $10K, flood insurance added on top where applicable total insurance load, adding $400, $800 per month to carrying costs. That is the equivalent of a big chunk of extra mortgage principal. If you're a buyer, you now have to ask, can I not only afford this house, but insure it? What happens to my costs if we get re-rated again after the next big storm? Investors look at those same numbers and many simply walk. So you get inventory creeping up, buyers hesitating or lowballing, sellers caught between the house they own and the insurance market they can't control. Pearland is what it looks like when the environmental risk finally shows up in the financial math. And once that connection is made, it rarely reverses quickly. Number 2, Katy, tied to an industry that's changing. We stay near Houston but head west to Katy, built layer by layer around one dominant engine, energy. For decades, the model was simple: oil and gas pay. While jobs are plentiful, families buy big and master plan communities. When oil did well, Katy did better, but the energy sector today is not the same beast it was in the 1980s or even early 2000s. We're in a world of capital discipline, efficiency, automation pressure to return more to shareholders, not just expand headcount. That means fewer huge hiring booms, more waves of selective cuts, less confidence among mid-career professionals that their income will rise forever. In the housing market, you see upper mid to higher end sales, say 500K plus, slowing inventory in that bracket, swelling renters who could buy, choosing not to because they don't want to commit capital in the middle of industry uncertainty. Investors who bought executive rentals now face softer rent levels, more competition, higher ownership costs. Katy's weakness is structural. It's heavily tied, psychologically and practically, to one cyclical industry. When oil is euphoric, Katy inflates. When oil is cautious, Katy stagnates. Right now, the energy world is cautious. The market reflects that. Number 1, Round Rock, the tech darling that fell off the pedestal. We turn back toward Central Texas to end at the suburb that was supposed to be bulletproof. Round Rock, home to Dell, tied into the wider Austin tech expansion, marketed as the stable, reliable, smart money way to ride the tech wave without paying downtown Austin prices. For a while, that story played out. Tech companies expanded. Remote work exploded, tens of thousands of new jobs and transfers poured into the area. People started paying insane numbers for homes that, a few years earlier, were normal tract houses. You saw $800K one-water price tags on fairly standard $2,000 to $2,500 Ashang FT homes. Bidding wars with 10, 20 offers, cash buyers waiving inspections. Then came the tech slowdown. Not a single catastrophic crash, more like a series of body shots. Hiring freezes, layoffs in waves, restricted stock units not looking as invincible. Bonus uncertainty. Every time a layoff wave hit, more owners had to consider selling. But they weren't selling into the same market they bought into. Data out of the area shows median prices down over 20% from peak, a large chunk of recent buyers now underwater on their loans. Inventory up more than 150% from the trough. Builders are scrambling to move homes, offering extreme incentives, HOA dues paid for a year or two, rate buydowns, and other bonus perks. Every one of those discounted sales becomes a new comp. If you list your house today and it takes 60 days to get an offer, by the time you accept, you're doing business in a softer market than the one you entered. That's a downward staircase. Round Rock is the cleanest example in Texas of a suburb whose pricing was based less on local fundamentals and more on hype plus cheap money. Once both of those pulled back, the floor wasn't where people thought it was. The bigger picture, what these 10 suburbs are really telling you. Let's zoom out. Not every part of Texas is falling apart. There are cities and towns where prices are stable, demand is steady, and the math still roughly works. But these 10 suburbs, Frisco, McKinney, Prosper, Anna, Leander, Georgetown, Kyle, Pearland, Katy, Round Rock, are telling a story you shouldn't ignore. Cheap money hides bad math until it doesn't. A 3% interest rate made a lot of marginal deals look smart. At 7%, the true affordability shows up. Hype isn't a foundation. Tech booms, miracles, and viral growth stories are not risk shields. They're accelerants, both up and down. Taxes and insurance matter as much as price. You don't own a home with just a mortgage. You own the tax bill, the insurance, the utilities, and the risk profile. Corporate experiments can wreck local markets. iBuyers, hedge funds, and Wall Street-backed landlords can distort prices in ways ordinary households end up paying for. Single industry dependence is a hidden fragility. Whether it's energy in Katy or tech in Round Rock, tie your housing market to one economic engine, and when that engine sputters, everything rattles. If you own in one of these areas, it doesn't mean you're doomed, but it does mean you're not in the fantasy anymore. You're in a fragile, shifting market where time of market matters. Price cuts are real, and Zestimate numbers on a screen are not money in your pocket. If you're thinking about buying into one of these suburbs, slow down. Run the full cost. Taxes. Insurance, commute risk of layoffs. Realistic resale prospects if you had to sell in 12 to 24 months. Don't just ask, can I get approved? Ask, if the market takes another 15-20% hit, am I okay? Because the people getting hurt right now weren't stupid. They just believed a story that only made sense in a world that no longer exists. If this breakdown helped you see through the headline version of the Texas Miracle, hit subscribe, share this with someone who's thinking about buying here, and tell us in the comments where you want us to go next. The markets aren't done moving. And the more clearly you see what's actually happening on the ground, the less likely you are to be the one holding the bag when the music stops.